It is hard to overstate what a disadvantage the United States has put itself into. While the people who are immersed in the MAGA propaganda channels believe that their man, President Trump, is winning wherever he turns, that he has the world right where he wants it, and he is running rings around them all in the name of the art of the deal. Well, reality is somewhat different, and that reality is seeing many countries working out the rather simple formula that Trump uses every time to work out how to game it to their advantage and to America's loss. And the challenging part is that the most important conflicts that we are now facing are completely outside of Trump's limited toolkit, and it seems quite likely he's just going to make things a lot more dangerous. So let's discuss first the dilemma Trump has that he doesn't even realize. Most countries have a subtle and strategic view of the world, sometimes because they're led by highly cunning or thoughtful leaders, more often because their leaders are supported by experienced diplomatic operations. Sure, you can overstate that. People still make fundamental errors, usually by presuming common ground with people whose cultural starting points are very different to their own. But largely, the nations of the world observe, they study carefully how things work, they learn how to interact in ways that are pragmatic and mostly effective. Diplomacy, it's called. Then you have President Trump. Well, Trump believes in his own hubris, that he is a consummate deal maker and that he doesn't register the contrary evidence that reality often gives to him. And rather than taking the advice of those seasoned diplomats who know what they're doing, he has surrounded himself with yes men with remarkably little experience. People who will tell him that of course the last election was stolen from him, and yes, of course he is the best deal maker ever. Hence, when he has really sensitive negotiations, he sends a real estate golfing buddy. Not someone skilled in negotiation or who even knows the most basic facts about the leaders and the countries that he's dealing with. Initially, with Trump 2.0, the leaders of the world were startled by the boldness and the aggression of his initiatives. It was so completely different to what we'd seen in recent decades that it took, 3 months. I mean, it's not that long. It took 3 months to work out how this version of Trump works and how he can be handled, even you might suggest manipulated. But now, particularly in the wake of the recent China tariffs climb down, it's becoming even clearer. For one thing, in China and a number of other places, Trump is now being derided as the taco president. Taco standing for Trump always chickens out. The pattern is this. Trump comes in with an outlandishly brash and often offensive proposal.
The Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad, this could be so magnificent.
And then having provoked with his radical and eye-catching action, he believes he forces the other side to come to pay court to him, to beg for relief, to offer up concessions that they would never have offered up without the size of that provocation. But all these shrewd observers of events over the last 3 months have seen that that is not actually what happens in practice. Trump proposes a radical position, the targets of his attack. They respond in a measured and patient way and let the full backlash against his madness bear fruit. Then Trump will back down, and as he does so, he'll declare victory anyway. Those MAGA propaganda channels reliably report the victory. The people that make up his base happily believe it. Trump has a genuinely simplistic view of how some parts of the world works, or how hard a conflict would be to resolve. And so therefore he makes a simplistic proposition of how it can not only be resolved easily, but also in such a way that would benefit him from so doing. Career diplomats have long known that getting things done in the world often involves, for instance, making their leaders think that something was their own idea and ensuring that those leaders get the credit for success. The phrase I used to hear, and indeed used quite a lot, was that you can change the world so long as you don't mind who gets the credit. Realpolitik. Now, we have an inversion of that. We're quickly getting to the point where the phrase has become, you can change the world, so long as Donald Trump gets the credit. It doesn't matter if you believe it, so long as his base believes it and the people around him parrot it. The shrewd power brokers of the world, the Vladimir Putins, the Xi Jinpings, have seen the pattern and they have quickly learned. So when Trump imposed tariffs on Chinese goods back on April the 2nd, I've decided to stop referring to that event under the stupid name that Trump gave it, all the nations of the world were told, do not retaliate. The best deals would come to those who offered up concessions and no retaliation. Now, China didn't play, it matched the tariffs and then matched every increase thereafter until they'd reached the point where it had become a de facto trade ban. And then it just sat and waited, and it took precisely 40 days before the climb down finally came. Bear in mind, this whole tariff thing was a big deal. Trump slapped tariffs on the entire world. But at no point had his administration given a clear and consistent explanation even for what he thought he was doing. Largely because the people in the administration capable of stringing words together in complete sentences, they had no idea what the heck their boss was doing. So it was said that the president was reshaping the world financial order and doing so based somewhat bizarrely on America's trade deficits with the different countries. Or he might be doing it to reindustrialize America, to make it economically viable to produce products in the country that it's not entirely clear anybody wants to make in the country. Or he might be doing it to create new income sources for the government to help it bring down its deficit or alternatively fund tax cuts. Or he might be hitting the world with a shock in order to negotiate those tariffs away, which would completely cut across all those other versions because they all depend on keeping the tariffs in place. But that version negotiates them away in return for concessions. And it seemed to be the latter that then directed the subsequent behaviour, except that the countries who got involved in discussions started to comment that it wasn't clear what America actually wanted. They saw enough of Trump's taco behaviour to think, well, let's not be too hasty to give anything up here. Let's keep our calm. Let's see how this process plays out. And so it is that just one deal has so far been announced, one with the UK that wasn't even a deal, more a bare outline of what might turn into a deal at some point in the future. So that was a process that really, so far at least, has delivered America very little, has delivered Trump very few wins that he can boast about, but has demonstrated to the world how he works. But now Trump faces two big challenges where the real art of a deal would actually be quite useful. The ongoing morass that is Russia and Ukraine, and the looming conflict of resolution with Iran. Putin was invited by Trump to grasp his hand of friendship, with promises that if he did so, there would be great dealings to be done between the two countries. Well, Vladimir Putin is many things, but he's not stupid. Even if Trump is attracted to the strongman dictators club and would love to be considered an honorary member, he is not seen by Putin as a member of his club at all. Nor does Putin want to respond to his overtures of supposed friendship, fake as they are. Now, he will happily string Trump along. He will mock him by taking what's offered and giving nothing in return. He can deal with the total credulous, innocent Witkoff that Trump sends him as his so-called special envoy. Putin can see that all of this enables him to play the long game. He can see that Trump doesn't much care about Ukraine's borders, that Trump shares his own distaste for Ukraine's current leadership. He can also see that complex situations that drag on for a long time will eventually bore Trump, who will want to move his attention somewhere else where he can do something simple and new and gain lots of attention again. So Putin will push for limits, knowing that however much Trump gripes about it, he has no motivating point of principle that will likely turn him into an opponent. That any position he takes, he will probably climb down from when it doesn't get the desired response. He will try to use the situation to wrong foot the Ukrainians, like proposing direct peace talks, but then rowing back after Trump has thrown his own support behind the idea, undermining the Europeans who are demanding that there should be a ceasefire first. He can also drop hints about potential Russia-America deals should the world end up with a Russia-led Ukraine, because that is as reliable as catnip apparently. This has so derailed Trump's normal process that his team doesn't quite know what to do next. The simple plan had been give Russia what it wants, bully Ukraine into concessions, quick conclusion, Trump credit, peace prize, etc. But giving Russia more than it could ever have imagined it would ever get from an American administration, well, it turned out that wasn't actually enough. But what are they going to do about that? Some are saying Trump will turn against Putin. But then what? If Trump did that, he is then into a difficult situation that does not fit his simplistic formula. Faced with an opponent where the United States has limited leverage or bullying power that he can bring to bear. Faced with demands that are extravagant and unrealistic even for the Trump team. There is a bipartisan bill in the Senate to hit the countries that buy Russian oil and gas with 500% tariffs if Putin doesn't come to the table. Now, even China and North Korea would be likely to stop buying Russian oil faced with that, at least if they didn't know it was being imposed by President Taco. The bill sits there, waiting for Trump to indicate he will support it. That indication, at the time of shooting this video, has not come. We would be into a different world, a different Trump, if such backing ever did come. We would be into a very different world if it was backed and then followed up consistently and with determination. Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath. And then you have the Iranians, also shrewd, also taking notes. Initially, they had been startled when Trump said he wanted to negotiate another nuclear deal with them. That was immediately followed, of course, by the ritual humiliation of President Zelensky in the Oval Office. They, along with all the dictators of the world, looked at that and said, no way are we doing that. But then they've started to see how to play the man. From Trump's starting point that Iran should drop any uranium enrichment or else they may be hit with massive force, either from the US directly or by proxy from Israel. But the Iranians have now, according to some officials, been floating ideas for, yes, you guessed it, joint ventures, maybe with the US, maybe with their rival Saudi Arabia, nuclear energy joint ventures, for instance. And in so doing, they seek that sanctions would be lifted and Iran would get to keep some of those enrichment facilities and activities. Because, you know, a deal's a deal. There's give and take. In his visit to the Middle East this week, Trump has said that he wants to make a deal with Iran, but said that it needs to end its support of proxy groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Such requirements often disappear or get watered down in the process of finding the deal that Trump can present as a win. There's every likelihood that remaining focused and firm, finding ways to give Trump the illusion of a win that he can boast about at home, that is the way to get an outcome that you would never have been able to achieve before. It was only 2 days ago that I said that the world's flattery of Trump and collusion with him in painting an account of reality designed around his ego rather than around real events, that was making it harder for all of us to know what is actually true in the world. But now this goes further, because the truly shrewd and powerful actors on the world stage, the ones who do not have our interests at heart. They are discovering very quickly how to flatter the man, how to manipulate the man in exactly the way that enables them to shape what is true in the world. Trump, the property developer, is busy playing out a cartoon version of the art of the deal, while they are implementing a strategic approach to power politics and diplomacy. There's no point in boasting that you have the best cards if you don't know what game you're playing. So right now, it seems to me that we have, Europeans, Canadians, Aussies, some in Asia, seeking to manipulate Trump to get good outcomes in spite of his base instincts. And then we have the authoritarians, seeking to manipulate Trump to get the best outcomes for themselves and for the world order that they're looking to create, which would accelerate those benefits at our expense. And everyone's trying to do that against the backdrop of the chaos, the lies, the corruption, the fantasy versions of law, justice, and even science that are shaping the administration's policies. The point is that America, as the most powerful country in the world, used to be one of the primary players. And instead it has now made itself into, yes, the strongest piece on the board, but still just a piece on the board. The thing that you have to manipulate and master in order to win the game. And it all comes now to the skillfulness with which we can play that part versus the skillfulness that Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping and the rest will bring to their side. That's what America has been reduced to, but we have to recognize reality and try to make the best shot of it.